It is more important than ever to understand this crypto market, to understand what it actually means to accumulate Bitcoins and what is really happening behind the scenes here. People are still somehow saying that Bitcoin couldn't reach $140,000 or something like that neat in this cycle. What I'm going to show you today is really on a whole different level. So please stay tuned until the end because I have structured this video systematically. You'll notice that right away. We now have the company Tether, which has founded another company called 21 Capital. Through this company, they have now purchased over 4,000 Bitcoins, worth nearly $500 million. That's absolutely brilliant because what's happening here, more and more companies are now following in the footsteps of Microstrategy. And you just have to understand how Microstrategy is structured. Microstrategy is a company that's basically a complete Ponzi scheme. The company bought Bitcoin. As a result, the company rose along with the price of Bitcoin. This allowed them to get more liquidity from the banks. They took the money from the banks, invested it in Bitcoin, and were thus able to significantly increase the company's value. But they have to pay back the loans. How do they do that? By selling their own shares. And that's the brilliant part. On top of that, more and more retail investors are also buying MicroStrategy stock. It's even listed in the S&P 500 now. So it's a complete Ponzi scheme, and everything here builds on top of each other. It's basically a dead company. Just take a look at the chart. MicroStrategy was completely dead for years until they pulled off this move. And just imagine, the company goes to the banks, takes out loans, and uses those loans to buy Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin goes up and MicroStrategy goes up as well. Because MicroStrategy has gone up a bit, they get more and more capital from the banks, and the whole thing keeps getting inflated further. It's a huge bubble. I mean, just look at this. Where does MicroStrategy buy in big? Right here at the top. Down here, he didn't get any loans. But right here at the top, he's getting bigger and bigger loans. But of course, that's also because the stock has gone up. It's a brilliant thing, as long as it doesn't collapse in on itself. If it does collapse, well then, hallelujah. As long as that doesn't happen, it's incredibly clever and is buying up all the Bitcoins from under us. And now, as I said, the next company has already jumped on exactly this bandwagon. We also saw in the last cycle that Tesla started buying Bitcoin and so on. What do you think will happen if more and more large companies start using their own capital to buy Bitcoin and then list it as a company asset like MicroStrategy? That would have a huge impact. And you can see from MicroStrategy just how well that works. As I said, it was basically a dead stock until they really started aggressively accumulating all Bitcoin. Since then, the thing has absolutely skyrocketed because everything here is simply built on top of each other. And just think about it, if more and more companies start doing this, imagine if some countries also begin to do it, if they take out loans from banks and invest those loans in Bitcoin because they know for sure that Bitcoin will rise in the long term. That way, their loans are also securely backed. This is incredibly positive and can have a huge impact. And now we come to the next topic. Let's just take a look at the Bitcoin reserves. Here in blue, we see the Bitcoin reserves, and in white, the Bitcoin chart. The Bitcoin reserves on the exchanges are getting scarcer and scarcer. You can see it for yourselves. They're becoming more and more scarce. The people who are really buying Bitcoins here usually withdraw them as well. And that's the thing. That's what's brilliant about the crypto market. People buy, take these Bitcoins, send them to a wallet or wherever. These Bitcoins are no longer in circulation, and as a result, we simply have a market shortage. Plus, we also have the halving effect. That means we simply have fewer Bitcoins in circulation. And now I have to show you a calculation. That is definitely crazy when you really think about it. Thanks to the Bitcoin miners, we get 450 new Bitcoins per day. That happens every day. So that means per week we have 3,150 Bitcoins that are simply added each week. Now we have the Bitcoin ETFs, and just last week, over 18,600 Bitcoins were bought up by the Bitcoin ETFs alone. How crazy is that? That means through the Bitcoin ETFs, 6 times as many Bitcoins are being bought up as we get daily. So what we get daily is being bought up 6 times over, just thanks to the Bitcoin ETFs. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the supply shock. And this supply shock is yes, most people absolutely underestimate it in the long term versus because there's a reason why Bitcoins are being made so scarce. The companies are buying up everything here. And as I said, I just showed you this using the example of the Bitcoin ETFs. Here, Microstrategy and retail investors, the regular investors, aren't even included in the calculation. That's why we also take a long-term approach, as I said, because in the long run, we will simply be so scarce that price targets of even $1 million per Bitcoin are absolutely possible. But of course, over the coming decades, not in the next 1 or 2 years. One could now say about my calculation, okay, but currently more Bitcoin is being bought again because the last few months for Bitcoin were rather negative, so not that much was bought up then. And that's true. But Bitwise even did a calculation, and you can see that just the companies alone have bought 3.3 times more than what we get daily in new Bitcoin. That's crazy. That level of scarcity is unbelievable. You really have to imagine that. That's also the reason why the Bitcoin hash rate keeps rising continuously, even now when we're at the top. The Bitcoin hash rate is skyrocketing because we currently still have huge demand, since the big players are sometimes buying Bitcoins directly from the miners. That's why we still have this massive demand for more Bitcoins. And especially now, as the M2 money supply is increasing, banks are issuing loans faster and in larger amounts because they know very well that the markets will be flooded with liquidity again. And as a result, this MicroStrategy Ponzi is building up even more, or other companies are now starting to do the same, like the company Tether, which has also started doing this. All of this absolutely builds on top of each other. We can also see this based on the Bitcoin addresses. The people who hold over 100 Bitcoins have been diligently accumulating in recent months, even when prices were so high, and the addresses that don't even hold 1 Bitcoin have been selling almost exclusively in the past weeks and months. That's the big difference. The major players are buying extremely actively here, pulling these Bitcoins directly off the exchanges because they know very well that in the long run, they are focused here, and in the long run, Bitcoin is far too cheap. And if I now tell you that we actually have a huge Bitcoin shortage, but Google trend searches are at an all-time low, then I think you can imagine what could happen here in a bullish, truly euphoric bull run. The more volume we get at once, the faster we'll experience this supply shock. And such a supply shock can really lead us to completely different price targets in a very short time. And that's why I tell you, even price targets of $150,000, $250,000 in this bull run are more than possible. What's happening in the background, what retail investors are doing, what smart money is doing, there are huge differences there. And that's why I'm definitely on the smart money side. And I'm not trying to run away like a dumb retail investor. In the long term, we're still in a really good position, and everyone should be aware of that. There are just a few small levers that still need to be adjusted, such as further interest rate cuts in the US. Accordingly, we would then see a fresh capital flowing into the markets from the US. That alone would be the last thing we currently need. And it's already clear today that this will happen in the coming months, or rather that it will definitely happen this year, most likely toward the end of summer or so. We'll see a more relaxed monetary policy along with interest rate cuts. Because, I mean, just look at it. It feels like the whole world is already printing money. The M2 money supply is at an all-time high. We can really see how the fundamentals in the background are improving every day with fewer and fewer Bitcoins available despite the current market situation. And if this market situation really does ease up now with the interest rate cuts, plus the expansion of the money supply, then we're in for quite a ride. That's why I'm telling you, there are still some really interesting price targets possible. And the later Bitcoin falls in terms of Bitcoin dominance, the more money will be left over for our altcoins. Alright folks, I hope you enjoyed this short and snappy video. If you liked it, as always, leave a like and a comment on the video. And until next time friends, ciao.